Election speculation next spring.
Michael Crick, well, it was a perfect night to convene our wise panel of political insiders. Danny Finkelstein of The Times, once of Conservative Central Office, Peter Hyman, a special advisor to Tony Blair, who escaped back to the classroom, and Ollie Grender, political consultant, formerly a Liberal Democrat strategist. We'll come on to Michael Crick's question in a moment, but first, how did Gordon Brown get himself into this?
Well, I know people will say, oh, it's all media speculation, but really his advisers have been talking this up for weeks and weeks, and I've never been able to understand why. I think whatever he does for Christmas, he needs a new set of advisers who know to do the two things advisers should do, which is give him good advice and keep their mouths shut.
Well, I think it is a little bit media, though, because, like, you know, there was even a suggestion as the temperature raised last night, even here on Newsnight, that, you know, Gordon Brown will be looking at the ICM Guardian poll over his cornflakes and making a decision on a general election. We all know that actually what he will be looking at is detailed polling research in marginal constituencies, and that is what will make his decision.
But what it served to do was unite the Tories at their conference. David Cameron had had a bad few months. There would have been a bit of a fractious conference, and instead they all got behind him, and he came out of it well. So if he'd wanted an election, he should have not done any hints, waited for the end of the conference season, and then sprung it on people next week after the spending review. In a dramatic
and whatever
way.
the merits or demerits of it, the inheritance tax played a blinder.
Well, it was certainly a very well-tested and very well-presented piece of policy. And the thing is that Gordon Brown may as well have been ringing up George Osborne and David Cameron for a month every day and saying, I do hope you're ready for an election. Make sure to make all your policies ready for an election. Because he gave them something.
Let's not get carried away on the tax cuts. What they've ended up with, which is quite interesting, they've had all these policy reviews. What the Tories ended up with this week is the Europe policy, the tax-cutting policy, the benefits policy.
And this was, not David Cameron's speech. Yeah. It was not David Cameron's speech. It was actually George Osborne's speech.
But you talk about giving himself new advisers for Christmas, but who is he actually listening to? Who is bigging this up?
I hope that he's listening to himself, because he's a monumentally successful politician. This cautious method people criticise him with has been very successful, and now he has to be bold and say, I'm the one that makes the decision, you can't talk me into a corner. I'm not going to go to the country when I'm 3% ahead in one poll and even in another, because it doesn't make any sense.
Who is it? Give us some names.
Well, I don't know who the names are, but the calculation still is this the high point. And it's a monumentally difficult decision. He is in his honeymoon period still. I don't think Cameron's particularly ready.
Ends the minute he makes the decision not to go to the polls. I mean, by the way, I don't believe he should. No, I don't think he should go to the polls.
But what do you believe that he's the he didn't do it man? You know, we just heard that there from his biographer. There's been all these different times where he didn't do it.
I genuinely think, given the incidents that have occurred throughout his leadership so far, that by the time we get to the spring, this moment will be forgotten.
But he's the did do it man. He became Prime Minister. He'd been Chancellor of the Exchequer for 10 years. He ought to have the self-confidence to say, no, I did it and I know what to do.
And I don't need another mandate.
But there's an interesting point. If he waits 2 years, that's his mid-term. It's the end of the Parliament, but for him, he might be at his least popular in 2 years' time, and therefore I think in the end he'll go for spring. I think he won't want it now because the polls are just too close.
I'm quite comfortable.
I think I'm
quite comfortable with the thesis that he won't be a very good Prime Minister and that people won't see the change. I'm comfortable with that, but I'm surprised that he is. Not going now means that he accepts the argument that he's actually going to be less popular the moment he actually does anything, rather than now. And I think that's a difficult argument for him to accept. You can quite understand why I might find it more convincing.
Tell me, though, if he doesn't do it now, it's the Michael Crick thing, if he doesn't do it now, will this not come back time and again? How does he stop it? Without saying I'm going for fixed term, how does he actually stop it?
I think there's a delicious irony here, and if I was a member of the Blair camp, I'd be laughing about this, because he is now going to have endless speculation throughout his premiership in this term. And you know, exactly the same way that Blair had constant speculation about his premiership, thanks to mutterings by the Brown camp. So, you know, if I was in the Blair camp, I'd be quite pleased with the irony of this.
We're about to learn. Can Gordon Brown be a leader much more than a politico? Is he going to have these people surrounding him as little group and, you know, issue things like saying, you know, I'm really authentic according to a press release from his publicist? You know, is he going to be a genuine leader of the country rather than just a political calculator?
Funnily enough, both of them need an agenda. I think Gordon, in a way, feels that occasionally feels that not being Tony is enough. I think Cameron has got to a position where not being Howard or being a smiley face on Howard's policies is enough. And actually, both of them, what was interesting is they both had a collection of policies without a big kind of argument or narrative in their conference speeches. And both are, if you like, for both of them, it's too early to call the election.
I do fully accept that, actually.
Well, tell me, what has actually to happen now? We'll talk about the Liberal Democrats in a minute. For Cameron, who, I mean, it was a clever idea to send the letter to the civil service saying, you know, to flush out the idea that...
He had no choice but to push for an election. But I've always been clear that for the Conservatives, they concentrate on themselves. All that David Cameron needs to think about is, how does this make me seem? Does it make me seem moderate? Does it make me seem reasonable? Does it make me seem as though I have an agenda? Does it make me seem as though I'm in tune with modern Britain? And as long as he does those things, then he'll be fine.
And this is all about Tory and Labour, isn't it? It's the classic squeeze in the Liberal Democrats.
It is the classic two-party squeeze, and it's a nightmare. But a snap election works in the interest of the Liberal Democrats, because the last thing they want is loads of money to be spent in those marginal constituencies where they're going to where there's a possibility that they lose their seats because of the amount spent by Ashcroft and his organisation. So they will want a snap election. They will believe that it is very much in their interest.
But you're losing, according to the polls, you're losing ground, and Tories are benefiting from you losing ground.
Well, the Liberal Democrats are not having a good time in the polls. What they would say right now is that being in the media is what will help them.
Okay, well,
and being in the media needs in a general election.
Are you still convinced you don't need a new leader?
Oh, and the new leader debate is, you know, it's gone.
Okay, well, it is over. Well, let's go round. Do you think that there will be an election called on Tuesday?
No.
Gordon Brown is a sensible man. He knows this is a risk, too big a risk to take. He won't call it.
I agree with that.
So,
spring.
No elections.
No election.
These advisors say no election.
We're not his advisors.
We're not his advisors, but no election.
Thank you very much.
But if you're watching, Gordon.